Welcome back. We are on part 2 of episode 16 of the Fanboys Anonymous group meeting podcast about the Spider-Man reboot that Sony and Marvel are going to bring to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We talked in the first part of Peter Parker or Miles Morales, essentially boiling it down to, we're going with Peter Parker. So now there's more of a back and forth when it comes to our next topic that we're going to break down, and that is who should the villain or villains be in the movie? This is something where it isn't as much of you gotta go with this. It's a personal preference, and it's things that are going to be weighed whether or not you should reboot and do the same characters or you should do something different or what. I'm going to throw out a couple things right here, though, that I think that we can eliminate right off the bat. Neither of us are going to pick Big Wheel.
Well, hold on, Tony. You can't speak for me on that one.
That's true. You might be going with Mr. Negative or Spot or something, but,
We're like the 5 people that keep screaming Shocker for some reason.
Actually, I'm going to make a case about Shocker in a few minutes, but...
Oh, God.
Yeah. There's a lot of characters in the Spider-Man Rogues Gallery that you just can't do. And as much as you could do them on a TV show, especially like an animated show for kids, you're never going to bring Stegron into the film universe, or the fucking Hypno Hustler. If we see, a live action Marvel Cinematic Universe adaptation and Molten Man is what you go with, then you're making the wrong decision. It's, you can go with a lot of different things here, and you can reboot the same kind of characters we've seen before. You can do different ones or whatever, but there really is only a list of about 20 characters that you can do. So before we get into specifics about this, do you think they should go with somebody new, or do you think that we should redo some of the ones we've already seen before?
I would personally say let's bring somebody new. Spider-Man is one of the few characters, at least with Marvel, because with DC you've got Batman and characters that have like a very large, rich rogues gallery. Spider-Man is one of those classic characters who there are a ton of his villains that are not only famous, but cool enough that they've even crossed over with other characters before. They're not just unique to Spider-Man. So, you can list off, right off the bat, 5 characters. I couldn't probably even list off 5 characters for Iron Man without, pausing and being like, oh, well, wait, yeah, there was that guy.
It's doubtful. Like we mentioned in the first part, you interview people standing in line and go, who's Miles Morales? And they might not know. If you go, all right, name Iron Man characters, people aren't going to be like, all right, there's Titanium Man and Madam Mask and
Crimson Dynamo.
Spy Master.
They're not going to know all those.
The Unicorn, dude. Oh, shit, Unicorn's a fucking man.
But all you have to do is say, okay, name a Spider-Man villain. Green Goblin, Hobgoblin, Kingpin, Spider Slayer, Doc Ock, Shocker, Mysterio, Rhino. You can literally just go down, 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 and just
Jamie
start
Foxx.
I would personally say because he has such a rich rogues gallery that you go with somebody new.
I'm going to go in the same regard here, because I think that, look, if we're going to get a reboot, we don't need to reboot the same thing that we've seen before, and I do agree that some people are goblined out. We've already watched Harry in 4 movies. We've seen Norman in 4 movies. And they've been fighting as goblins in 3 of them.
Yeah.
I don't need to see another Green Goblin for a while. And you know what? Since the Amazing Spider-Man films had set up this idea of Norman being like the Emperor, essentially, and they just never got to it.
Yeah.
I don't even want to see that either. I don't want to see them have to build up a trilogy, because I don't want a trilogy at this point.
Yeah, I don't want just a one-off, but I would like to see a franchise, but not solely just focused on Spider-Man either.
Yeah, you don't need to make this 1, 2, and 3, and we'll get into that a little bit with the Part 5, the future movies and stuff. But if you're going with a new character, who would you want to see? Or characters for villains?
I would say when it comes to villains with Spider-Man, you're going to see the Spider-Man character in an MCU crossover film before you see him in his solo film. Since we're going to get the solo film being the second time we see the character, we still, at least to me, I would like to still see some crossover, considering he is a character that's in New York City. So he's in a character that has been hit by the Chitauri invasion from Avengers. So there's a rich pool that you can play with now, that you have a main character who's in that city. I would personally like to see Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, who is going to be in the Daredevil Netflix series. I would like to see him brought to the Spider-Man film and trying with his resources and wealth to replicate what happened to Peter Parker and Spider-Man and create Scorpion.
So you got Kingpin is the Overlord, Scorpion is the fight sequence, essentially.
Yes. As long as he doesn't die by the end of the Netflix series, which I don't believe he will.
No, I don't think that. I think that they're going to keep him around for a long time because D'Onofrio is a big enough name and Kingpin's a big enough character.
Right.
You know, it's different if like they kill off like Stiltman or something.
Yeah, and Kingpin is already, because he's in the Netflix series, which is part of the cinematic universe, he's already in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to reestablish him. You will for the movie, just for people who didn't see the Netflix show. But you're not going to have to go out of your way to create this character, because all you have to do is just pull whatever happens after the Netflix show is over.
Right. Now, I like that idea of bringing Kingpin in there, especially because not only does that give more of a tie-in to the Netflix series and more of a reason for people to go, oh, shit, you know what? I got to go check out that prequel, essentially, is what they'll look at it as.
Yeah.
But that brings in a totally different aspect of the Spider-Man series that we've never been able to see in the movies so far. We've pretty much stayed to costumed, comic booky type of characters in the Sam Raimi films, and in the
villains he could punch, basically.
Yeah, and even though he shouldn't have been able to punch Doc Ock.
Yeah.
And then in the Amazing Spider-Man universe, we've gotten the weird science-y offspring characters.
Yeah.
But we didn't see the mafia aspect. Spider-Man has a ton of people in his rogues gallery that aren't really these, science experiments gone wrong. You've got the Kingpin, you've got Hammerhead, you've got what do they call them? The Kingpin's main crew. Shit.
Oh.
There's somebody who starts with an F, and I can't remember him off the top of my head now. His main primary people, though, are people that Spider-Man can fight with.
From the 90s cartoon, he was really associated with Smythe a lot.
Yeah, he had a lot to do with Smythe and a little bit with, like, Silvermane.
He set up the Sinister Six.
That's true. There's the Sinister Six in that one, which they still want to do that. We'll talk about that a little bit later, too, because I still think that that's some kind of a mistake. Kingpin is somebody that I really think that they could do a lot with. If they do go that route, I don't know if I would pick that for the solo film, though. I think that a good way to introduce Spider-Man in Civil War, which I don't know how they're going to do this. I don't know how they're going to balance out the search for Bucky, the relationship with Sharon Carter, the arguments between Steve and Tony, Tony's story, because he's got to have some kind of a story in there mostly. Black Panther.
From Age of Ultron, like.
Yeah. Have Black Panther have a representation in the movie and introduce Spider-Man. That's a lot to carry in one film. And
I really think the biggest mistake is calling this Captain America Civil War. If they just called it Marvel Civil War, you wouldn't have had to focus so much on Captain America, because all reports are saying this is still Cap's movie.
Right.
So stop, if you take the focus off of him, you could bring the other characters into the spotlight a little bit.
I'm curious at what they're going to do with that, but I can't imagine Spider-Man being established more than, a quick fight scene or something.
Where he pops up and then... Because they're not going to want to fight over him like they did in the comics, because he's literally brand new.
Yeah.
While these Avengers have been around for 5, 6, 7 years. Cap 70, but...
So I would love to see, in Civil War, introduce Kingpin. One scene, have Spider-Man fight with him and a lot of his goons. You could have the different people that, Hammerhead, and you could have Tombstone, and
Or just have him fight make Crossbones an associate of the Kingpin, because Crossbones is coming back.
Oh yeah, that's right. Crossbones is gonna be in this too. Fuck, man, they have so many people that they got to do with this.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see him fight them, and the movie itself that they can spin off of that, Kingpin isn't involved. That way they can throw their reference out there. They can have that kind of a thing. And if they want to go that route and have him in that cameo thing with Civil War, make it to where Spider-Man's brand new. Or not like brand new, not like it's first day. But he's pretty much just gotten started. He hasn't fought any villains yet.
Could be like he's either been Spider-Man for a few weeks, maybe a couple months, but not like 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, just make it to where he's recently gotten the power and he's still looking for the killer that killed Uncle Ben.
Right.
That way he could trace him back to Kingpin. And, Richard Fisk or...
Wilson Fisk?
Well, no, Richard is his son.
Oh.
You can have him in some involvement in the Netflix series. Maybe there's some kind of connection between them if you don't want to throw in Wilson Fisk or something like that in every little thing. You've got Michael Marco, which you could always make related to Flint Marco, which is really an overrated character. Sandman is only in those movies because Sam Raimi likes him. The Enforcers, that's the name of the people that I was thinking of. Big Man is one guy. Like, there's a lot of different people that he could be working with, and Spider-Man can just be fighting those people. And when you get that spin-off movie, I'm going Kraven and Scorpion. Scorpion's pretty the same as what you had said. Somebody has to make Scorpion.
Yeah.
And
in an attempt to replicate what Spider-Man is.
Yeah. Kraven, I think, you either have to put him in with somebody else that is like Lizard or Scorpion or something like that, because there's a good opportunity here to do something what they did with the Raimi ones, but not to the extreme. One thing I did like about Raimi's films was Spider-Man never killed anybody.
Yeah.
But they did end up dying. And you can kill characters off. I mean, it's perfectly fine. You kill off Malekith. We don't need to see Malekith anymore.
Right.
But you don't need to kill off everybody. I think Scorpion is the type of character that needs to die. Kraven doesn't need to, but he could. And I think a good way to introduce Spider-Man in that solo film, where you want to give him more of a backstory and you want to actually tell the origin a little bit, but not go back the whole thing, is to kind of do what they did with the Incredible Hulk movie, where you just do it in like flashbacks and you kind of go through it like that. But you can do that by explaining how they're making Scorpion. And somebody, I don't know who, maybe it's Jameson, maybe it's Kingpin, maybe it's Norman Osborn, whoever it is, I don't care, doesn't really matter, has to hire Kraven to hunt Spider-Man. And then Scorpion's created, and Kraven is also hired to hunt Scorpion. Maybe by the same person, maybe by somebody else, I don't know. You kind of have like a three-way battle going on, which means you can have Kraven versus Scorpion versus Spider-Man versus Kraven. So there's not that gang up kind of a thing where you need two people to fight Spider-Man and how can he beat them.
Yeah.
Scorpion represents that like crazy side that Spider-Man isn't. Like, he does need to be rounded up. He's fucking nuts. Kraven is kind of working on the good side, but he's the villainous side of the good side. And Spider-Man, of course, is like the true good guy. But, of course, it's getting all shit on by Jameson and stuff like that. So,
right.
A lot of parallels between them. And I think that that's a good way that you can kind of introduce some of the scientific side of things, but you don't have to go with just, like, Norman Osborn. What about the theory that's going around now that it's going to be Mysterio and Shocker?
Is that actually going around?
That's one of the rumors, but, rumors are just rumors.
Taking that at face value, I've always kind of wanted to see Mysterio on screen. Like, he's got a lot of people that don't like him. I've always just kind of liked the character. I've just found him to be interesting. I did theater in high school. kind of, I see where he's coming from a little bit. But
I had a fishbowl once.
yeah, Shocker, you gotta get rid of the costume, like Electro. If you're gonna do it, do like it's stolen Stark tech or something like that, or like just something that will kind of tie it in, but like just a guy with gloves that shoot electricity or like like hit you and they can like damage you real bad. That I don't see it as a threat to Spider-Man. Like I know he is in the comics, but if you want to bring it into the real world, like a lot of the Marvel movies have done, where they've tried really hard to keep their characters grounded, a guy with tasers on his hand isn't really a match for somebody who has their DNA blended with a spider. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't, unlike Scorpion, who is literally could go toe for toe with him. I just don't see the Shocker as being the muscle character. Like, I don't know.
I know what you mean.
Mysterio and Shocker is an odd combination. So.
And to me, neither of them has a story to tell.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather see them incorporate both of those into the Sinister Six.
Yeah, they work better on a team.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really do well as one-off villains. I mean, unless it's in the comics. Then okay, one issue where Shocker is robbing a bank and Spider-Man stops him. Okay. But not a feature film. Unless you're going to do something like the Sinister Six.
I want to see, and again, we'll talk about this in part 5 with the Sinister Six movie. I want there to be a Sinister Six movie, but only as the villains of a Spider-Man movie. I don't want a spin-off film. And if you give me Sinister Six and you give me the 6 that I would want realistically, I want Doc Ock leading the team. I want Mysterio, Vulture, Shocker, and either a combination of Sandman and Hydro Man, or Rhino and maybe Electro or something like that. Like, but I want the characters that can't stand on their own. Chameleon, pointless for Chameleon. Right? He's not going to put up a fight.
Yeah, because if you have too many super powerful villains, then it becomes unrealistic that Spider-Man would even win.
Right. I want to see a movie where you've already introduced Black Cat and she could team up with him, and you've got... I still say that one of the biggest mistakes that they'd ever made in the films is they should have gone with Hobgoblin for Harry in Spider-Man 3 instead of Green Goblin wearing a fucking... whatever the fuck he was wearing.
Like a skateboard, but
yeah, screw that. He should have been Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
But, bring me Venom working with him, or bring me Hobgoblin working along with Spider-Man or something, and Black Cat, and they can fight the Sinister Six and make it like this big blow-off movie. But you got to give me the people like Vulture and stuff who can't hold a film on their own.
But you know what? Even some characters who can't hold a film on their own, I still wouldn't want to see in the Sinister Six. Like, he works in the comics real nice, but don't put Chameleon in the Sinister Six movie. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of those villains that's like, you don't need him.
No, if you're going to do a Chameleon movie, it's going to be a bore, because he's going to pretend to be Spider-Man, and we already know the story.
Right. And anyone who doesn't know the story, like I said, like, surveying moviegoers, we represent, like, the 1 to 5%.
Mm-hmm.
The other 95 to 99% isn't going to know who Chameleon is, and are going to look at that movie like, so what did he do again?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the same reason why you can't have Beetle as the villain. People will be like, oh, he's fighting Iron Man? No, that's Beetle. Well, wait, Beetle? That sounds stupid. Like, he doesn't look like a beetle. What do you think about this idea, though? There are 2 other suggestions that I've heard from people. One of them I would rule out immediately, and one of them I would go, I don't know, maybe, but wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in. Some people are saying go with the Clone Saga and make Jackal and like Doppelganger and Kane and all them.
As much as it's amazing to think about, because I love comics and I love Spider-Man, I still gotta think about, like, Sony and Marvel Studios are putting out this movie to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And once you start getting into clones
Yeah.
and who's the real Spider-Man, and I just feel like that's going to confuse people.
Yeah.
Like, it's the same argument as, like, Batman Beyond. Like, wow, that'd be really cool if they made a Batman Beyond movie. And then, like, my neighbor who lives down the street might like Batman, and it'd be like, wait, so it's like the future and Batman's a kid? Like,
Right.
We forget that even though we think it's a good idea, it might not translate to a movie that may or may not be good, but people aren't going to want to see.
Mm-hmm. You can't treat the film universe as an animated spin-off movie like what DC does.
Right.
So that's why I'd rule out Clone Saga. But I do have a little bit of credibility to throw out there for the other suggestion that I've heard, Morlun. If you bring out that idea of him having this, like, totem, and you've got Silk and Morlun and, you know, the whole, like, I guess you could say, like, the mythology behind him and all that, that might be an interesting direction to go. To me, you can't go without the first movie, though.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about Morlun. What they could do, I mean, this would obviously just have to be a setup for other characters. You could go with Morbius, and possibly now that Blade is back with Marvel, set up like a Blade, either Netflix series, spin-off movie, whatever.
I'd rather see Morbius just in that. I don't want to see him in Spider-Man. I've never liked the idea of Morbius being a Spider-Man villain. Kind of the same as how I don't like aliens in with the X-Men.
Yeah.
You know, like, when people start talking about the Gem of Sidorak, and they're like, well, you know, he's not actually a mutant. He's got this magical gem. Fuck you. Just make Juggernaut a mutant. Don't make me have to sit through Spider-Man versus a goddamn vampire. Especially not the vampire from the animated series, because Jesus, that was bad.
What was the woman he was after? In the 90s cartoon?
I should know this because he repeated it constantly.
Yeah. Was it Felicia?
It might have been Felicia.
Was it Felicia Hardy? If it was like, Felicia. And it was like, you're really trying to be Dracula now.
Right. And they couldn't have him say blood, and he couldn't bite anybody, so he had to suck plasma out of its fingertip suction cups, which is...
Yeah, and like how Carnage would, like, he wouldn't drink the blood out of people, he would, like, absorb their life force or something.
Yeah, that was so stupid. So, if you're going to go with two different sets of villains here, how do you introduce Spider-Man in Civil War? How do you introduce him in his own film? What are the villains? What would you break it down to?
I would break it down to have none of his villains in the crossover, because that's just going to muck up Civil War even more. You're already adding in another character to their legion of characters, which some people complain about, but I mean, look at X-Men Days of Future Past.
Right.
That movie didn't feel crowded, and it had, like, countless mutants. But make Spider-Man he gets in the crosshairs of what's going on, and just gets sucked up into what's happening. And then, for his spin-off movie, introduce Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. Have him see Spider-Man swinging around and try to replicate that and weaponize it. And he creates Scorpion based on that. And then you've got Kingpin and Scorpion and the Mob versus Spider-Man.
And I'm going to go with Kingpin and the Enforcers and the other people like that in the crossover Civil War movie. And then Kraven and Scorpion in the solo film. So we got, you know, Kingpin and Scorpion in both. So hopefully they don't just go, hey, fuck you, we're going with Doc Ock. Or like...
Well, now we're going with Black Cat.
Yeah, oh God. Well, you know what? That's going to bring us into part 3. We're going to talk about friendships and relationships in the movie. Should we have Mary Jane, Gwen Stacy, Black Cat, the Osborns, the Brocks, you know, a lot of different things like that. Stay tuned, everybody, and click on that next video if you're watching this on YouTube. We will be right back.